Okay. Did you have an answer for Sam's question? I know he's not here, but he'll catch up when he gets back.
Yes, we do. Looking at the numbers, so there is an extra reduced pumping OPEX of 50,000 in the first year. And that wasn't included. We just added back the revenue. So essentially it would be adding another 50K back for year one if we delay to the further year. But there will also be, so that's a 0.01, right? So the point, I think we had it at 0.4, didn't we? 0.41.
0.41, so it would go to 0.4.
0.42, other way round.
0.42.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the other impact of that is in regards to an impact on levels of service, which I will just hand over to Helen to explain.
So one of the consequences of the very high summer demand is in those high summer demand periods. I mentioned we have to run every well and every pump station, and that does tie up staff and contractors in terms of maintaining those pump stations, particularly maintaining the chlorine dose and the sampling that's required, the monitoring of those pump stations when they're operating. And that does mean that we slow down in our response to other water service requests. So people start to see that we're a bit slower responding to minor leaks. We're still straight on to major leaks and breaks, but we are a bit slower responding to minor leaks, and we're also a bit slower responding to new connections and other requests across the network that we can put off. There is a little bit of this, there's some operational efficiencies in here that aren't reflected in the finances but are reflected in the services that we offer.
Okay. So were there any other issues that people wanted to raise on the other ones, which are the Mayor's recommendations, organics processing plant, which is now being resolved by way of a noting provision, waterways quality and compliance, Takapuneki Reserve, Coronation Reserve, and the other amendments, the adult playground, Templeton playground renewal, waterways quality, tree canopy. Are there any questions on any of those? Melanie?
I'm looking at A8, the community services card. I wanted to understand why it would cost...
Sorry, what are you doing?
Oh, we're not on that. Okay.
Not there yet.
Sorry. Okay, all right. So we've got the amendment in the name of two councillors who are not in the room. This is really unhelpful. Well, the trouble is that can we deal? I don't know.
Or could we move the others? And
I'm not going to have a separate debate. Thank you. Someone's gone to get them. Look, can I just? This is slightly caught me unawares. So, can I just leave that sitting there at the moment? Can I just go to? Oh, no, there's nothing. Oh, yes, there is. The noting provisions. I don't know what to do. Sorry. Look, I'm just going to adjourn the meeting until they're here. This is ridiculous.
I've told the rest.
The two councillors that came back late has held up the meeting. We've dealt with the answer to the question that was asked prior to the meeting, and we have asked if there are additional questions on other matters, and there isn't. So we are about to move into the debate. The reason I wanted everyone in the room that had moved and seconded recommendations was so that we could proceed to debate. So I'll open the debate with the recommendations that we are considering here. So the recommendations that are in front of us are because we have listened to the community that has made submissions to our annual plan. We have looked to and found the funding that is required in order to remove the tailings from the organics processing plant, and that is being done through operating surplus and through funding from within existing budget. And that is enabling that to proceed without amending the annual plan. So although it's written originally in the paper as a recommendation, it is being dealt with as a noting provision that the resources have been found in order to achieve that. We are increasing funding for flood protection and control works by $250,000. There is an amendment in front of us today that suggests lifting that to $300,000. The advice, though, that we have from staff is that the $250,000 will enable the work that needs to be done, and we don't need to increase the amount to $300,000 in the annual plan. This can be reviewed in next year's annual plan. It can be looked at in the long-term plan. The focus on flood protection and control is going to be an issue for this council for a long time into the future. Takapuneki Reserve. This is an important partnership that we have entered into with Onukul Marae, the Runanga out there, and they are welcoming us to Takapuneki on Friday, which is of course the first public holiday designated to celebrate Matariki, an important time of the year. And it's an important time of the year the world over. And it's been interesting reading the history of Matariki and also the star cluster that it represents, and all of the different names that are given to it all around the world by Indigenous people, and actually dating back into Greek mythology is where it begins, the story begins. And every grouping of Indigenous people around the world that have looked to the skies have found different names and different narratives to fit it in with their worldview. So it's been a fascinating thing. Takapuneki Reserve is an important part of the history of our country from European settlement. So yes, it has a prior history, but the travesty and betrayal that was represented by the massacre that occurred in this area, creating Wahitapu and a very special place for people. But ultimately that massacre led to a sequence of events that led to the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi in New Zealand. So it's an important part of our history, our bicultural history as a nation. And this is an important continuation of the work that we will see unveiled on Friday. Coronation Reserve is again a development that's operating within one of the wards of this wonderful council that I can't recall off the top of my head as I'm just speaking to the amendments. The last thing that I want to mention is the excess water deferral amendments, and I'm grateful that staff have come up with an alternative that would enable those that would like to see a little bit more time spent on notifying people of the changes prior to them being collected by way of the billing regime. I think that the questions today have really focused our attention on why we did this in the first place, why as part of the long-term plan we actually said that it was really important that people understood what their water usage was in order to take the pressure off the infrastructure over the summer period And that is the reason for it, not for the financial side of things. And it would take a very good case to be made for it not to proceed. So we will see how that proceeds, but I think it's important to remember that if it doesn't proceed, then the cost is borne by everyone, including those who've actually gone out of their way to make sure that the system is working and that leaks have been fixed. Right, so would anyone else like to contribute to the debate, or shall I just go through the amendments? Sarah.
No, thanks for that. As staff said earlier, the long-term plan was a huge amount of work, huge number of workshops, an enormous amount of consultation, really widely canvassed across the city, and a lot of work done at that time. And the annual plan was supposed to be a light touch. And so, and it wasn't supposed to be a relitigation of everything that we'd already done in the long-term plan. I'm in favour of the Mayor's recommendations. They're things that have come through the submissions process and other things that we've seen that are supported by staff, and there's been guidance given that they should be Mayor's recommendations. So I'm really happy for those to go through. They make sense, and they only have a really minor impact on what was the original draft. However, I'm not going to be voting in favour of the other amendments today. Staff advice is pretty clear on those, and I'm really not keen to see staff where the organisation is really, really stretched already, loaded up with things that they can't deliver, and so we'd be rating for unnecessarily, and so I won't be supporting those today. As our summers become warmer, pressure on our system and our water systems become much higher, and so I won't be, the only one I'm really going to speak to specifically is the water excess charges. And there's increased costs and a struggle to meet levels of service when it comes to fixing leaks and those kind of things. And so the excess water charges are essential. It's really important that we put them in as we had already planned on the 1st of July. We have consulted on this twice, and both times it was well supported by the community. So we consulted on this in 2020 with the annual plan, again in the long-term plan with much more detail. We didn't consult on it this time, and there were 9 submissions. So I'm really not sure why we're spending so much council staff and elected member time relitigating it a third time. The submissions in the past were supportive. A delay in the implementation increases rates to all for the benefit of a few high users. And I don't think that that's fair on our communities. A 0.41 rates increase that will reduce our levels of service over summer, that will stop people conserving water when they should be in our warmer summers is really not on. I'd urge people to vote against the deferment at all of the excess water charges and to go ahead as planned. Thanks.
Pauline?
Yeah, thank you. I support all the other your recommendations, and I'd just like to speak against the elected member amendment to the already decided and agreed on excess water charge deferral. And we have to actually emphasise this is excess water. It's not a water charge, it's excess water. And it's been outlined very clearly today how important it is that staff are given the ability to work on our infrastructure in the hot summer months when they can't do it at the moment because the pump stations are running flat out all the time. We're asking them to deliver our drinking water improvement program. We know we're going to apply for an exemption for our chlorine. It's still going to be difficult to get, but our infrastructure improvement program is part of that. If it slows down the program by not being able to work on this in the summer, then it's going to be to the detriment of our city. We've already tweaked it. The allowance, I think, is around $450 a day per household. That was for 6 people or more or less. Now it's 8 people. 8 people, you won't be charged anything. You won't be charged until you use average of 700 litres a day over 3 months. If that is the case and you use up to 900, you still won't be charged. You'll get a bill to tell you you're using too much, but there'll be no charge because it's $25 and it's not worth charging for that. So in actual fact, The allowance is now double what is the average expected daily use. So we've got to stop the fear tactics here. Most people won't get a charge. And one of the benefits of this is actually helping people to find their leaks. People don't really want to be leaking water. Most people want this because we need to conserve water. We need to protect our infrastructure. So I have confidence in staff that if come July, August, September, October, someone gets a bill that shows that they have a leak, they will be given the opportunity to fix that without being charged. That is the idea here, to actually end up with better infrastructure. Everyone has better infrastructure. So the ultimate goal here is a good one, and it's the right thing to do, and I think we just need to be brave and do it. So I don't support the amendment or the foreshadowed amendment.
James?
Thanks. Look, I'll keep this relatively brief, and I just wanted to speak to the excess water charging. Look, I'm happy to second deferral around that, and I'm not doing so because I don't think that the excess water charging is a fair policy. I don't think it's a fair policy. However, I don't intend to relitigate that there. I think that's been well traversed. We did that in the LTP, and that was the time for it. The reason why I'm supportive of deferring it fundamentally is that I question the readiness of the city for it to be implemented at this point in time. You know, too many meters have yet to be installed, replaced, or repaired. So I fundamentally don't have the confidence that it can be universally applied fairly. So would favour that it be rolled out and considered in the next annual plan.
Sam?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like James, we're happy to move the amendment which looks at deferring it for the year. And I think if you look at it, you know, the circumstances have changed. So when we went through the LTP, we didn't know that the water reforms were being mandated. But let's be very clear, this is a step in the direction of volumetric charging right across the city. So people can say it's scare tactics and the like, but I think moving to this is enabling a system which will fundamentally alter the makeup of what we know as the Garden City. Now, I think when we talk about the infrastructure, when we talk about behaviour change, we're saying actually our infrastructure isn't up to handle the water. So why would we move the goalposts and say, well, actually, let's not fix our problem. Let's say that's everyone else's problem and then reduce our sort of, I guess, value in the infrastructure we have. So I'm just not sure we're going about this the right way. And I think that I can't reconcile in my mind how if we aren't doing something properly, we say we need to force behaviour change on people and then charge them for doing so. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think, you know, it's a really good debate to have today, particularly in an election year as well, because the people of Christchurch will really, I guess, begin to understand whether people will force decisions on them or actually listen to what they want. And I don't, for a moment, think that we should change the composition of what we know as the Garden City.
Anne?
Yeah, kia ora. I will be supporting the Mayor's recommendations, but like Sarah and Pauline, I won't be supporting any changes to the water excess water charging agreement. Sorry. I'm interested that, and the reason is because we've done an enormous amount of work to get this to this point. There have been many briefings, many workshops. We've heard there's been communication, ongoing communication. It's been adapted to make sure that people have got the information. We've heard through submissions, through all sorts of things that you know. We're okay with this. This is a good thing to be doing. It's a good thing to be doing for our water, our environment, for our future. It's a good thing to be doing for many reasons. And but also I won't be supporting any amendments to this because in principle, having done all this work and to have had people who sometimes perhaps haven't been at briefings to then at the last minute bring changes to something that has been worked on for a lot of time by a lot of people is a bit disrespectful. So I won't be supporting that today. I'm also interested that those who have historically perhaps fought for lower rates are supporting something that will mean an increase. So so I will not be supporting any amendments to a change in the excess water policy.
Andrew?
Thank you. Again, on the water charging, I note the communications plan, and I thank staff for the presentation that certainly clarified a lot of the matters around the discussion that's taking place today. In particular, I note the need for, or the proposal for further communications, the intention for further communications in August and September. And I'm guessing that those communications are not gratuitous. They're going out because there's a need for them. And I note that August and September come after the 1st of July. Clearly, there's a lot of interest and engagement in this matter. Interest and engagement's ramping up, and I'm sure today's meeting will contribute to that as well. I hope that it will. The intention to start charging in the near future is what's driving that interest and engagement, starting to drive behaviour already. I'm to some degree disappointed that this was a decision that we made in the long-term plan last year based on the need to reduce demand on the network and therefore to reduce unnecessary investment in the network by reducing the volume of water needing to go through the network at peak times. We're now having a conversation that to some degree is driven by revenue considerations, when this was never intended to be a revenue generator. It was intended to be a change agent for behaviour. So I'm fully focused on the reasons we did this in the first place, to reduce peak time demand on the network. I would far rather that we were driving people to the water reporter and the tools available to better understand their behaviour and their situation, rather than driving a negative reaction to a bill that they get unexpectedly. And that was the reason for the very direct question that I asked. So all of this leads me to supporting the foreshadowed amendment, which would see billing take place on supplies from the beginning of October. I understand and respect the principled approach that others have talked about. This same council made a decision in the long-term plan, and a principled approach says that we would stick by that decision. There's quite a bit happened since then that's affected our ability to communicate and do things in the way that we might have anticipated. We've had 25% of the staff of the organisation off with COVID and isolating and so on, which has affected our ability to do some of this. If there's a need for communications in September and October, in August and September, let's do that. Let's then implement from the beginning of October, do it once, do it well, and do it with the confidence that we're getting this right and people really do understand it.
Jimmy, Chen and...
Okay. First, regarding to A2, just quickly, regarding the temporary playground. When I raised this amendment to the council table, I'm very happy. Quickly, the following week, the staff of the parks, the community park rangers engaged with me. They thought that's very, very crucial to engage with the local community. The short term that they can fully understand whether council short term provide those service is sufficient or not, like a picnic, benches, the nature play, locks. And the long term, because this one put on the financial year 2026, but not any figure, only the pool combined with some other the kind of playground. But how do they know, what the community needs, etc. So the community, the park ranger, he's willing to, to like to have discussion with those local communities. So I'm happy, and also now they have make appointment. The next time they will engage with them, have a meeting. That's one. Second one, regarding to A4, the tree canopy, the one. Because why I like to the second one, because we are all aware, the compared to the other major city, the Auckland and Wellington, all the tree, the canopy, the cover is the lowest one. Even last time between the 3 years time, we still dropped for 2%. Those the tree canopy, the cover. So it's quite a serious. Right? We always mention, we are the garden city. If a garden city should be more tree planting reserve. But why we have this one? But my understanding, the officer mentioned, now they are almost will be finished presented to the council meeting regarding to the urban forest, the plan, etc. But we still don't know. And also particular implementation of this plan is very, very crucial. Whether the current is, I'm not sure, it's 1 million or how much. Whether can implement this the kind of the plan. I still lost the confidence. So that's why I would like to second. But regarding to the A4, the extra water deferred, we are all aware, the purpose of excess water, the use charge, is for the water consultation, is rather than to charge the extra water use. That we need to know this actually is water consultation. However, over the last year, still quite a few people, they didn't receive, if they over the 700 meters. And that's a 33.6% of people, Christchurch, they didn't receive this fund. Even the 900 liters, over 900.
Thank you.
But still don't know. So we need to strengthen those communication. And also, I was told by the officer, probably next week they will send the letter to the.
Thank you.
Still take a time, So that's why this time.
Your time.
Okay, time out. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Melanie.
I hope everyone will support the amendment for the adult playground today. This one was brought to our community board by Carolyn Potter, our chair, and even made it onto the news. We would like to start progressing this, and our board is obviously in support of this because it's in our community board plan, so it's a priority for our board. Waterways quality, we were recommended originally that $500,000 would be a good amount to spend on flood protection and works to prevent sediment going into the Heathcote River to protect our waterways. So that's why Councillor Scandrett and I are proposing to increase that by just $50,000 to up to $300,000. I think it's perfectly reasonable. And then in regards to excess water, to me, there's really no logical reason to defer this. We've already been through this process, and it was supported by a majority last time we looked at this, and I cannot see how anyone has actually changed their position on this in terms of the public. Anyone not supporting moving on with this immediately doesn't support behaviour change, in my opinion. And they also don't support the fixing of infrastructure, which currently is really only possible properly during the winter months. It's not acceptable. Listen to the people. The majority are in support of encouraging those who use excess water to decrease their usage and to think about basically what they're doing. There was an article in the press just 6 days ago. The majority of the comments, which there were very few, were actually in support of just continuing with this. People want, one of the comments says to stop the political posturing, reasonable use will not be impacting, and why are people who are acting reasonably expected to pay for those acting unreasonably? And that's a very excellent question.
Aaron?
Why are those acting reasonably being expected to pay for those acting unreasonably? Because those that are, in brackets, acting unreasonably are already paying up to 20 times more for water and will get the same allocation as those that are acting reasonably. On this one, Christchurch City Council is wrong because the majority in New Zealand that charge do so volumetrically. They don't charge on capital value, then bring in an excess water charge. This is just doesn't sit right with me. If we were going to do volumetric charging, happy to do that. So we'll all pay for the amount of water we use, and everyone's behaviour will be based on how much they will be paying at their own house. That will have a better effect on lowering the amount of water because people in Auckland use half the amount of water that people in Christchurch do. They volumetric charge. So to do it this way is just punishing a few who are already paying, most of them, are already paying way more for their water. So let's not dress it up as anything that it's not. It's just straight out wrong. And if Three Waters is shoved down our throats, like most of us think that it will be, then we will go to volumetric charging in New Zealand. And if we go to that, your bill will be another $1,600 a year anyway, and your rates won't be coming down. Or even though under this, your rates will be coming down. So I will be looking at people's rates from this month, and then in 3 to 4 months' time, once this goes through, because it's obvious it will, I'll look and see how much their water has dropped and see if there's any misinformation in that or whether it was accurate. The other ones I'll just quickly mention is the adult playground. Got one in my ward. It's in Bishopdale. Come down and have a look before you vote on this. No one uses it. There's a whole lot of playground equipment, really good nick. It's just not used. An adult playground sounds cool, but they can go to every other playground and use the stuff. What about disability playgrounds? They are sorely lacking across the city. So adults can exercise in all sorts of ways, and you can actually go online and look at ways to exercise without even needing any equipment at all. And so I suggest that it's just not needed, and it's a waste of money, and no one will turn up and use it. But beyond that, and there's a great one around Higley Park as well. It's used sometimes. And then on the thing of behaviour change, I'm not in favour of behaviour change. I believe councils are here to facilitate how our society wants to live, and we should facilitate that as efficiently as possible in the best way for the environment and for the budget, not dictate to people how we think they should live based on our own ideologies. We're facilitators, not dictators, but sometimes the opposite prevails.
Right.
Kia ora. Look, councillors can put their own spin on, why we should defer this, but this isn't. This didn't just come at the long-term plan; it was also at the annual plan beforehand. Once again, that was supported, by the community, and although it didn't pass that time, the excess water charges was supported by councillors Chu, Goff, Kua, McDonald, and Major. What we did do from that is a resolution to ensure that we'd relook at it in the long-term plan, ensure that equity and fairness was actually included. From what I can see, the main difference now between that water excess charge and this one is the fact that equity and fairness are now included, with the advantage that higher valued homes receiving a higher allowance has been removed. With that vote this time, councillors Chu, Goff, Kua, McDonald, Major voted against, and now they're trying to defer this when we know that 4% are using 23% of the water and the top 20% are using 53% of the water. This creates huge problems during peak summer demand. It increases our operational costs and actually puts at risk firefighting capacity. The evidence shows from actually the communications that we've had so far that we are seeing people change the way they use water and also fix leaks, and we also know that the ongoing communication will ensure that everyone that will receive a bill will know about it before it happens. It is actually unfair on households that use water responsibly to have to cover the additional costs of those that do not. Council is also not forcing behaviour change. People can choose to use more water and pay their fair share for the impacts of their high use. I won't be supporting those amendments or any amendments proposed by councillors. I believe as a council we've actually worked really well to get the rates, actually reduce the rates from what we went out with and also what was in the long-term plan to 4.56, and I think actually in this rising cost environment to be able to stick to that would be a really good effort. It concerns me the amount of amendments that we are seeing in front of us today and actually what that will have on the final rates that may be struck. In fact, I'm really concerned actually about some of the people that are putting these amendments up, especially when you look at the 0.41% rates increase that deferring the excess water charges would have when they're coming from people that actually talk about rates restraint all the time. What I will be supporting though is all the Mayor's recommendations, and then we'll have to see, I think, at the end of the amendments where the rates are sitting, whether I actually will support the annual plan. Thank you.
Celeste.
While I understand the desire to push pause on any measure that may increase costs for some residents, this is an easy position to take in an election year. We have to keep in mind this is a question of fairness, equity, and ensuring we're responsible stewards of this precious natural resource for future generations. It's also intended to save money, as fixing undetected water leaks means less money spent on expanding our water supply, just to cater for a small proportion of users over summer. We're doing this not because it's the easy option, but because it's the right thing to do. We know that a volumetric charge is a fairer system of allocating and charging for the maintenance of our water services. Under the current system, around 20% of residents use half the city water supply, which we all pay for, whereas this excess water charge is intended to fall on high users only. We consulted widely on this proposal, and we have already delayed the decision until we had sufficient time to work through any concerns. We're extremely fortunate in Christchurch to have a clean and high quality water supply, but for many years we've been putting off making a decision around how to make sure that we sustain this for future generations, and we all know that it's no longer sustainable. The status quo is no longer sustainable in the short term, so I won't be voting for any of the resolutions.
I think that's everything. Yanni.
Just quickly touch on the excess water charges. I support the deferral to the 1st of July next year on the very simple premise that I think if you want to create behaviour change, people need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And I have not been able to get with confidence the number of people that will be able to look at their meter readings on quarter by quarter for a year and look at actually what the difference is. And this was something that was raised when we first discussed this as part of that annual plan and the LTP. And I was repeatedly assured that people could get their readings, but what has become apparent through this process is that there's still a concern that there's a number of people out there who are unable to see what behaviour change is required to meet the charging that's been put in place. So I support deferring it. I appreciate the work that staff are doing to reduce the people using excess water, and I think that is a positive way forward that also needs to be looked at with those other measures that we've discussed around rainwater tanks and reuse of grey water. Just moving on, I'd really like to encourage councillors to support the tree canopy resolution. The reality is that it was clear through our tree policy hearing that the community were deeply concerned about the impact of intensification and development post-earthquake on our tree canopy. They wanted council to do more, and since that time, the central government has also made more enabling provisions around development. The problem for us is that we've declared a climate and ecological emergency in 2019, adopted an Aitutahi climate resilience strategy in 2021, applied to become a tree city of the world, and the Mayor has called for us to become a national park city. But if we believe in the value of trees, then we must commit to serious action to address the problem, because every day we leave it, more valuable trees are chopped down and our community and environment suffer. There's also an environmental inequity in that the traditional leafy suburbs of Christchurch stand out with having good tree canopy, and the areas with the least tree coverage are in the less prosperous neighbourhoods to the east of the city that were also badly affected by the Christchurch earthquakes. The urban forest plan, I was told, would be presented to us in December 2021. It wasn't. I was then told it would be presented to us on the 2nd of June 2022. It wasn't. And now we're told that it will be coming for the new council to consider. We need to act a lot quicker around protecting our trees and planting more trees. And that's why I've put this amendment forward, and I hope that you will support it. I just finally want to conclude with saying I strongly support the additional resource around waterways quality. It's really imperative that we address our urban waterways, and it is absolutely clear from the community that we need to do more around monitoring and enforcement and compliance.
Thank you. All right. Phil Major.
Thanks, guys. It's just a couple of things. Yanni brought it up. That waterways quality one, the new bylaw, which I was involved with along with Councillor Cotter and Councillor Donovan, addresses most of the problems that have been put forward here. We've brought in new bylaws for sediment control and things like that, and it more or less covers that. So I won't be supporting the putting an extra $300,000 up there for that. The tree canopy one, I think we should we do need more trees, which is great, and we should push forward and plant as soon as we can all that area of land down at the wastewater treatment plant where all the compost has gone from the OPP. We should have a bank of trees there and just get our percentage of tree cover up. It might not all be in the right places for some people, but at least it's getting something put in the ground, whereas at the moment there's nothing. There's only cows there. So and there's a couple other things I'll be voting for or against. The water one, I tend to go along with James. We're not quite ready yet. I'd go along with what Jake has put up there as a foreshadowed motion, because we need to let people see what their rate demand says and say, right, this is how much water you use, this is what you could get done, and this is what we will bill you if you don't start playing the game. So we've got to lead them on into it. I would have actually and would have liked to have a higher number and worked our way downwards as we got people to change their the way they do things and encourage them to save water, not sort of start low and trying to nail them down to a low figure. But that's beside the point. But we do have to be bold and do something because the rest of the country is doing it. Thank you.
Tim.
Thank you. Just quickly, with regards to the water quality, it's only an extra 50,000 because staff have said it's actually already 250 in it, so it's only an extra 50. And we can have all the bylaws we want, but we must be able to affect them. And so this is what we're looking at with regards to that. With the water charge, the number one thing with the water charge, and it's a shame that it's called a water charge, because it's about respecting water. And we use a huge amount of water. We don't respect this resource, which we are very lucky to have in the quantity that we have. But it may not always be there, and we do need to respect it. And so I think it's just curbing that attitude is what we've got to do. And there are some people in society, no matter what you do, what you're looking at, that actually need a stick rather than a carrot. And that's the way it is. But it's going to be a very small group, because a lot of people have got onto their leaks and want to get onto it and want to solve the problem that they have on their property. So I'm going to be supporting these, and I hope the rest of you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, we'll go through the amendments first. So we've got a mover and seconder for the adult playground amendment, A1A. So I will put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Hard to tell. Can we have a show of hands? Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those
and me.
And 8. Jake. And I know he's indicated his vote. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, well, 9. So that's lost. Templeton Playground renewal. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. That's lost. Show of hands. Yes. Those in no. Yes. No. Well, I'll start with yes. So those in favour, put up your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right. Well, I didn't call that one, so that's carried.
Anyway. Just point of clarification. Can we just get it clarified under the next one around the quantum? We heard from one of the speakers.
So the water qualities one. Can we just write that the council increases the flood protection and control works by an additional $50,000 instead of, because the total, I mean, yeah. No. The 250 is in my amendments. Yeah. So my recommendations, which have been costed into the budget. This hasn't been costed into the budget and will have a budget impact. So, those in favour, well, it's probably easier just to put up your hands. So, those in favour, put up your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's lost. Tree canopy. Those in favour, put up your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's lost.
Division.
You want a division with 4 people voting in favour. Thank you. If you want to note that it was supported by councillors Johansson, Chen, Coker and Cotter. Thank you. If that could be noted in the minutes. Excess water deferral. It's probably easier to do it by way of division.
So doing A5A first, Owen?
Yeah.
A5, yeah. So for A5, the mayor,
Yeah. I'd like to vote at the end.
okay. Deputy Mayor Turner,
This is for
A5.
delay.
So I'm not in favour of the amendment, so no.
no. Councillor Chen,
Yes.
you are in favour of the amendment? Yes, yeah. Councillor Chu, Councillor Coker, Councillor Cotter,
No.
Councillor Donovan,
No.
Councillor Davidson,
No.
Councillor Galloway,
No.
Councillor Goff,
Yes.
Councillor Johansson, Councillor Keown,
Yes.
Councillor MacDonald,
Yes.
Councillor Major,
Yep.
Councillor McLennan,
Yes.
I think he's a bit confused.
Councillor Scandrett,
No.
and Councillor Templeton. And the mayor.
So it's equal at this
Eight,
stage.
1, 2, 3, 4.
No,
5,
I'm not
6,
gonna
7,
I'm not gonna
8
make the
for,
call.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 against.
Yeah, I'm just gonna abstain then. So now we move to the foreshadowed motion.
So do you want to just clarify that for anyone watching online? That means it obviously doesn't proceed.
It doesn't proceed, no.
Yeah,
Because of the foreshadowed.
It's about rich people.
We don't increase the rates by 0.41.
I can go foreshadow. I can go foreshadow.
And can I need a
I can go
no, I can
foreshadow.
So clarify what the mayor's extension means that the amendment
is
fails.
there a seconder for the foreshadowed
the mayor's-
motion?
Order, guys, order.
Andrew.
Is that what you say?
Councillors,
The mayor's
I've got Andrew Turner's
I just want to be
seconding
clear that the amendment failed. Is that right?
So
Mayor's
if you put
abstention made
the
it
foreshadowed
easy that
motion
it
in
failed
the
because it was
same
deadlock.
order.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're moving on to the foreshadowed motion. It had a mover, Jake McClellan. It now has a seconder as well, Andrew Turner. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Turner,
Yes.
Councillor Chen,
Yes.
Councillor Chu, Councillor Coker, Councillor Cotter,
No.
Councillor Donovan,
No.
Councillor Davidson,
No.
Councillor Galloway,
No.
Councillor Goff,
Yes.
Councillor Johansson, Councillor Keown, Councillor MacDonald,
Yes.
Councillor Major, Councillor McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett,
no.
Councillor Templeton, and the Mayor.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against.
It's carried. Thank you. Now I'll put the recommendations. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. The total package of Mayor's recommendations as amended. The Mayor's recommendations, the original Mayor's recommendations. They not as amended. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy with the noting provision at the top, but
No, it's.
This is
Sorry?
M1 to M4.
You want to go through each one individually?
no, I don't. I'm just saying. I mean, even if we can just put it like I'm for M1A, which is a noting
We're not.
provision.
We were voting on them as a group. Do you want to go through them individually?
Well, I mean, if it's easier, just vote against. But I mean, that's a noting provision, so
It's been moved into the noting provisions. It's not an amendment to the.
Oh, so has it been removed from that?
Well,
It's just a noting provision.
it's
But
only a
there's a
noting
noting-
provision. It was just that it was there and it was incorrectly worded.
Yeah. Sorry.
a-
What I was trying to understand was, if it's a noting provision, is it sitting in here or actually in all the noting provisions that you talked about earlier on?
I'm happy to move it to that. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I don't follow what you're trying to do.
Okay, well, I'm not in support of the others, but I am in support of the noting provision.
He's saying, are you
Oh,
putting
sorry.
four together,
I
or are you doing them
realised.
separately?
Okay,
Basically,
so
is the question.
well,
Well, it's just a note.
well, we might as well
I'm not gonna
deal
vote
with
against
the
the noting
noting recommendation because it's here. So those in favour of the M1A, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Waterways quality and compliance, that the council increases flood protection and control works. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. So just hands up for no. Goff, McDonald, Major and Kewen. That's carried. Takapuneki Reserve, those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. That's Goff, Chew, McDonald. Thank you. That's carried. Coronation Reserve, those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Hands up. Goff, Chew, McDonald, Kewen. That's carried. Thank you. Now we move on to the next grouping, which is facilities.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just for the sake of getting through things before lunch, can we just quickly deal with the noting provisions? So I was dealing with them by way of a sort of separate motion. So I'll move all of the noting provisions, and do I have a seconder for those, Andrew? So, and because of what I was just thinking, because they're noting provisions, could I just open it up for a quick debate, and then I'll put that motion. Oh, okay. Yep. Well, it won't be a quick debate. No. So there's Andrew, Yanni, Melanie, Aaron.
Yep.
And
I've got a question actually more than a debate. Is it? Oh, it's fine.
Okay. No, well, sorry, I thought this might be useful,
Yeah.
but anyway, we'll have questions then. What?
Okay. I just actually wanted a question about the wording for noting 2, the Milne Sutherland Sparks intersection.
Okay. No, it was a bad idea.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to where you were. Okay. I'm going to go back to where I was. Okay. So much for that. We worked so hard on trying to get that right. So, facilities.
Right.
I'll hand over to staff to go through the presentation on the facilities.
So we won't go through the mayor's recommendations like we've done before. So go to the first proposal.
Can you put your mic on?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Apologies. So just repeating that, we won't go through the mayor's recommendations. We'll just go straight to the proposed amendments. The first one being that the council agree to a 3% increase in the museum levy. The staff position is recommendation is that we remain at the 0% levy, in which of what we've done in the draft annual plan. And that is due to the work we have done looking at the underutilised prior year level funding, and that we will continue to work with the museum going forward.
Now I've got a. Sorry.
Yep.
Can you just stretch back? So go back to that one because I just need to get the mover and seconder on the
certainly.
record.
Yep.
And just to note, can I just note so that people are really clear if they're listening, and go back up to the top of that page. Just the mayor's recommendations are the Robert McDougall Gallery strengthening, the Akaroa Museum, and the Governors Bay Jetty capital grant. So I think these are all issues that we are addressing in that context. So if we could move on to the proposed amendments.
Do you want to take questions on each of them, or shall we keep going?
No, carry on.
Okay, so this is the community museum.
Oh, sorry, no, I need them moving. So is Cotter and Major agree that the amendment is for the Canterbury Museum? That's in your name? Yeah, okay.
And there's a foreshadowed amendment there if that one fails. You're taking questions on all of them at the end of this block, aren't you? Yeah, cool. So services, community services card, that council investigate an increase to the community services card discount from 25% to 50% in preparation for informing the 23-24 annual plan.
Is that services?
Yeah, so there's only two.
No, sorry.
Just stick with
There's only the museum. Yeah. Sorry, I've just got very confused with various bits of papers. My apologies. I'll accept.
Yes. So sorry. I moved on. There is only one facilities. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Are there any questions on that or any of my proposals? Andrew, anyone else? Right.
Thank you. On the museum. Staff recommend a 0% levy increase. Now, I'm aware that this has already been through a briefing. There's been some further conversations and further work done in the last few days. I mean, I appreciate you're requesting a full recast of future year requirements, and we're wanting some certainty here. I agree that there's a need for a better understanding and better communication. But my understanding is that what we are considering to be operational revenue, which is available and therefore there isn't a need for the increased levy, is actually interest which has been earned on funding which is held for the capital upgrade, which the museum are wanting to tag to the capital upgrade itself, which in my view seems reasonable, rather than being actual operational funding. Is that the understanding? Is that the case? Or is there a possibility that we haven't teased that out in discussions and it could be the case?
If we just look at the last year's unplanned surplus, as we've called it, in the actual results of the museum, about 1.2 million of that was related to unspent base funding expenses budget, and the rest of it was largely from, as you've described, investment income plus also extra above budgeted grants and bequests, so that what they call their museum revenues, so the non-levy revenues. So it's a combination of saved base expenditure, remuneration, and some of the other costs around redevelopment that has not yet started. So those were largely covered by local authority levies. But they also received extra income, including the investment income that is largely for that redevelopment. So there's separate savings in their budget.
So in deciding that, in making the recommendation for a 0% increase, have you taken into account the interest on those funds held that I just described and the bequests? Yes. Have you counted those as operational funding?
No, those were excluded in getting down to what we call the base expenditure funding, which could conceivably be what the local authorities contribute to.
So the carried over from genuine levy-funded operational funding from the previous year, what's the amount of that?
It's approximately $1.2 million.
And our
out of a total $2.9 million unplanned surplus.
Okay. And the 3% increase that's been proposed in this amendment, how much is that worth?
250,000.
So 1.2 is approximately half of the 3% that has been asked for here, and that, as I understand it, the museum ideally would want. All right, that's great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Jimmy Chen.
I'm not sure regarding to the percent increase, but you mentioned need to engage other constitutional authorities, like maybe our neighboring council, like Solvent, Waimea, and some other council. How about the timeline if we engage with them? Who will be the initiate?
So just in talking to their CFO, we've talked about trying to get ahead of the next funding round so that we avoid these areas of sort of different expectations as to how surplus funds are dealt with, but also to look forward in the multiple years ahead through the redevelopment, because they're currently signalling up to 10% per annum increases. And I know that Waimaka, for one, are extremely interested in looking at that funding formula to make sure that it's the best possible that it can be.
My question is, how about the time frame we can get confirm, whether the neighboring council, Waimea, so they confirm would like to, increase the percentage levy. I just want to know what's the time frame. Or we don't know.
The time frame?
It's adjusted annually by population.
Yeah, the annual process, we normally get the first indications of the forthcoming museum plan around December.
Okay.
So we have a preliminary look before the formal consultation version comes in February, I think it was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? So people are reasonably clear on the issue. Okay, all right. So we'll these the mayor's recommendations have been moved and seconded, so I'll just run through them. I'm going to start the debate. So the Robert McDougall Gallery strengthening is a noting provision, but it also requests the Canterbury Museum to confirm availability of its funding balance at an earlier time to ensure that we can bring forward the council funding in support of the Canterbury Museum for the strengthening of the gallery at the appropriate time. The Akaroa Museum one has been one that was supported certainly very much in the submissions that we had. The one that I do want to focus on, though, is the Governors Bay Jetty capital grant. This was something that we put a lot of time and energy into. I have actually spoken about the Governors Bay Jetty as a project concept, where essentially we sold the jetty to the community for $1, and that dollar is framed and sort of held, and we'll be obviously taking it back under our wing once the repairs are complete. But this idea of the community owning a project, taking it forward, and with the funding now split 50-50, I feel like we're honouring the underlying commitment that we made at the time, that it was going to be a shared project, but the community were going to be given the task of getting it on. Every time I switched on my Facebook and got another notification about another fundraiser that they were doing, I could just see the community being built and strengthened, and the ability of the community to do that. It's been great to watch. So this is the sort of thing that really I came to council to do, was to enable communities to do things for themselves, that and to facilitate actions that would enable communities to actually really develop their own sense of place, with the support of the council, and this being a sort of a cost sharing agreement between the council and its community. I think this is a very good example. I look forward to the day when I see the photographs for weddings and various other things that used to be adorning Facebook pages in the past become the reality again, and I'm sure that will be the case. The Canterbury Museum one, I've kind of struggled over this one. It appears that there is a degree of analysis that really should have happened earlier in the process, and so I think the idea of getting that information clear, and it's one of those really difficult areas where there is where we don't own the museum, we don't control any of the decisions that they make, and yet we have an obligation to fund through a statutory process, which has left us in the position where we have notified our intention at the very last minute, and that does give cause for pause and to think about whether there is a contribution that ought to be made under the circumstances. So I enter the debate unsure about how I might vote on it, but I'll see how the councillors are feeling. So I've got Pauline and Andrew.
Thank you. Take some heart from that. Yes, I support the Mayor's recommendations, and I, like you, Leanne, are very, very supportive of community originated projects and communities being empowered to get together and do things for themselves. So that's really good to see. Look, with the museum, we appreciate we gave them no increase to the levy last year. They too are under significant challenges because of all the challenges that Peter so succinctly outlined earlier, COVID being just one of them. And they're actually seeing a downturn in their income due to COVID. So they are very challenged in their situation. And I think in the light that we gave them 0 last year, I think it would be very poor to give them 0 again this year. Normally, historically, we have increased the levy by 5% every year. If we give them a 0, as per the recommendation, there will be a knock-on effect with the neighbouring contributing councils due to the formula, which is based on what we give them in population. So the OPEX will be affected very heavily. So I think it's actually our duty to make an increase of a modest 3% to the levy this year, so that we can allow this as our biggest tourist attraction in Christchurch, with over 70,000 people going through, allow them to function as it should and to be able to continue being the draw card for the visitors in our city. No, we don't own it, but our city benefits greatly from the museum, and I ask you to please support this 3% increase to the levy this year, which equals a 0.04% on the rates. Thank you.
Andrew?
Thank you. The Akaro Museum, I would remind councillors that this is simply reinstating the funding that was removed in the long-term plan last year, and it needs to be reinstated to allow the levels of service that we agreed to last year to be delivered. If we don't put this back, then we won't be able to deliver to the levels of service that we've already put in place by our own decision. And people sitting around the table will recall the strong and very passionate support across the wider Akaro community for doing this. We heard from a number of submitters, so I'd like to see that responded to positively. The Governors Bay Jetty, I absolutely agree with the Mayor's comments. This is an absolute exemplar of community ownership of a project, community passion at play, a community taking control of its own destiny. There's something that the Governors Bay people are passionate about. They've got behind it. They want the jetty restored, repaired and back in use, and they're doing everything they possibly can to make that happen. This has always been talked about as a shared project, as a partnership project. We've always talked about cost sharing on this. The possession of the jetty is currently in the hands of the trust. The dollar that they gave us when they took possession of it sits in my office, and at some point that same dollar will be given back to the community at the end of the project when council once again takes possession of this asset, of this repaired jetty. It won't be me that gives the dollar back, but I'd like to think that somebody will, and it'll be a big celebration on that day. On the museum, it's all in the numbers. So the 3% takes us to 2.9. The carried forward is 1.2. That certainly doesn't lead us to a 0% increase. That would leave the museum 1.7% short, 1.7 million short. In an environment where they've got a big development project coming up, where they're experiencing the same challenges with staffing, cost escalations, and increased expenses that everybody else is at the moment, this is not the time to be leaving the museum short. So I'll be happy to support the amendment as it's put forward by Councillors Cotter and Major, but I've put forward the foreshadowed amendment so that we're not leaving them totally short. We're giving some contribution in the event that that amendment fails. But I think this is a time for us to be showing support, not to be leaving them 1.7 million out of pocket compared to where they should be.
Anyone else? Aaron.
Yeah, 2 quick points. Firstly, the Governors Bay Jetty, I agree with the Mayor on that one. That's, in my time on council, is one of the greatest partnerships we've probably seen. One of. There's been a few, but that one there's just a shining light, and no doubt in your retirement you'll take that one with you. Hopefully a picture of yourself on it when it's finished. Not for public, but for yourself, would be cool. And so I absolutely congratulate them in the work they've done. So hats off to that lot. The museum ones, I'm with the staff on this one. I'll be voting against the amendments. I think the staff did get it right. And a couple of things I'll just quickly say about museums is overseas, the big famous ones in London and in New York and LA. That you see in the movies and stuff, you pay to get in there. It's actually not very cheap, but everyone who lives local, it's free. So that's their model. But us tourists that visit get stung. But the attractions are so good, it's worth paying the money. And then it's like $23 US for an adult, $13 for a child. And then in London, their big famous ones are free. But the attractions are sensational. So we've got a couple of options here. They should be charging for people that aren't already paying for the museum. And it's not, I know it gets called Christchurch's #1 attraction. It's not. Westfield Mall, as more visitors go there, 12.5 million a year, and including people that are visiting the city, they go to Westfield. So let's not forget that. And but this is a reasonable one, but it is free. And then put in more attractions that people want to see, and the ones that you pay for, because they will. And that is a great revenue grab. And the really famous one from a few years ago, and I can't remember whether you paid or not, but it had 400,000 visitors, was that Air New Zealand roadshow. And it had more visitors in Christchurch than it did in Wellington and Auckland. So when you put in what people want to see, they will pay to go in, and that's where their revenue should be coming from. Pretty simple.
Anyone else? Melanie.
There are attractions at the museum that people want to pay for to go and see, like the dinosaurs at the museum. My daughter loved, and we bought a soft toy from there. So, just saying, it was awesome.
Thank you. All right, so
Was it cheaper than Westfield
move
Mall?
to the amendments. So we've got the Canterbury Museum one first. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
That's lost. So there's a foreshadowed motion that's been moved by Deputy Mayor Turner and seconded by Jimmy Chen. I'll put that. That's for a 1.5% increase in the museum levy. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
That's lost. Do you want a show of hands? Show of hands of those who are in favour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 8?
Oh, Jay, yeah.
And
yeah, happy to go for 1.5.
1.5. So that's.
Should we just count that
Can
again?
we count that again? Hands up for those.
1.5.
1, 2, 3,
7, 8.
That's 8.
8.
So that's lost. Yeah.
Unless there's an abstention.
And then we move to the, we'll go through them individually. So Robert McDougall Gallery strengthening. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no.
That's carried.
That's carried. So that's Jani Johansson opposed. Yep. Akaroa Museum. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Tim Scandrett, no. Governors Bay Jetty Capital Grant. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. So that's the, and it's 12:55 p.m. So I think this is a good time to adjourn for lunch, and we will be back at 2 p.m. Thank you.